Yo, what is up? This is Raphael from NBA Draft Junkies, and in this episode, I will be rounding out my mock draft 1.0. Also, while you're at it, please subscribe, hit the like and notification bell to get all the updates. I plan on breaking down prospects all season long up into the draft, and I have a variety of series that may interest you, from my freshman adjustment series to my top international prospects, and a new one that I plan on debuting this week on sleepers. I also have a web series that will be documenting my scouting experiences and my travels in Europe. It's called Barlow's Abroad. So subscribe, like, and hit the bell for all the updates. I am ready to start, but first I'll give you a recap of my top 10. At number 1, I had Paolo Banchero, 2, Chet Holmgren, 3, Jabari from Auburn. Number 4, I had Jaden Ivey, followed up at number 5 by Kendall Brown. And number 6 was my big shocker, J.D. Davison, the super athletic point guard from Auburn. Then I had another small guard in Kennedy Chandler at number 7. And number 8, I had Jaden Hardy from the G League Ignite, followed up at number 9 by Jalen Duren, who many have called Baby Dwight Howard. Then I had another small guard. I don't know why I'm on the small guard tip, but I had Jean Montero from Overtime Elite. And now starting at number 11, this player many felt was left off of my list, and they weren't too happy about it. But it is Keegan Murray from Iowa. Murray is a 6'9" forward from Iowa that has made huge leaps his sophomore season. I mean, he got off to like video game numbers to start this season, which was highlighted by a game where he had 27 points and grabbed 21 rebounds and blocked 4 shots. Now, I wanted to see how he fared against tougher competition, and he's played well. He put up 18 points and 19 points versus Virginia and Illinois, respectively. The downside is it sucks that we did not get a chance to see him against Purdue because he was held out with an ankle injury. So at number 11, I have Keegan Murray. At number 12, I have Ousmane Dieng. Dieng is a 6'9" forward out of France who is currently playing in Australia. And I'll be paying close attention to his role and how he's used this season. In a friendly game a couple weeks ago, he had 18 points and 9 rebounds in 29 minutes. But I was more impressed by some of the passes he made. He had some live dribble reads and one-handed skip passes. You know, just stuff you don't really see out of teenage 18-year-olds at 6'9". In that game, he pretty much showed everything that has put him in the discussion to be a lottery pick and the Paul George comparisons, but that game was sandwiched between games where he shot 1 for 7 and 2 for 6. And I'll just be paying close attention to his production throughout the season. At number 13, I have TyTy Washington. TyTy Washington is a 6'3" guard out of Kentucky. Now, Kentucky guards have a tendency to outplay their draft position. So right now, this may be low. Don't be surprised if you see him higher in my big board 2.0, 3.0. I don't even know how far I'll get. But when you consider how many Kentucky guards have outplayed their draft position, some teams are going to be like, you know what, we learned our lesson. I mean, we've seen it with Tyler Hero, we've seen it with Devin Booker. And now, I mean, BJ Boston, who fell to number 51 in last year's draft. And TyTy could be the next one that outplays his draft position. He's been steady, he's been playing off the ball, and he's been efficiently knocking down shots with a 47, 39, 81 shooting split through 8 games. But could TyTy Washington be the next Kentucky guard with more tools in his toolbox than he's been able to show in Lexington? It is definitely something to consider. All right, rounding out the lottery, I have Patrick Baldwin Jr. Now, I will be totally honest because I'm all about being transparent here. I'm having a hard time evaluating Patrick Baldwin Jr. because his production versus mid-major competition has not been what I expected. Now, I see the size, the physical tools, and I can visualize how his versatility fits the modern-day NBA. But I also see, with my eyes, games where he shot 7 for 20 versus Eastern Kentucky, 3 for 11 versus Bowling Green. I'll be totally honest, I was really not that impressed with his play at the under-19s, where 28 of his 44 attempts were threes, and he only shot 32% from 3. So I think that he is a good shooter, and I think he projects to be a good shooter, but he's not the sniper that he's been given credit for. But again, I know he has the physical tools. He's listed at like 6'9", 6'10", but he seems bigger than that. He can handle the ball. He definitely has some skills, but it's just applying them. And I know that his team isn't the strongest, but through his first 4 college games, he was only shooting 25% from 3. It wasn't until he exploded for 6 for 6 from 3 against Robert Morris where he bumped his percentage up to 40% from 3. But Milwaukee, I don't know. It's tough. I know he wanted to go play for his dad. I saw them get bombed by nearly 40 versus Florida. And so he's someone that I'll be tracking and following closely throughout the rest of the season. To be honest with you, if he doesn't dominate and put up big numbers against mid-major competition, on one hand, you can say it's because maybe his teammates aren't good enough. But on the other hand, I mean, this is what he signed up for. All right, at number 15, I have Bennedict Mathurin, who's been up and down so far after a breakout season, which was expected by many, including myself. He is a good athlete that can defend multiple positions, and I think he's a better shooter than his numbers indicate. To be honest, I actually think he has the physical tools to be a top 5 pick, but he lacks the ability to get his own shot. He doesn't have much offensive creativity off the dribble, and he's not really a good passer. But it's just as far as his overall physical tools and talent, I mean, I think he has all the skills. At number 16, I have Mark Williams, the center from Duke, who this might be a little bit high because some people figure that you can get similar value in the second round, but I think Williams has made a name for himself, and I definitely think he's made himself some money and raised his stock with his play this season. The numbers don't really stand out to you on paper. He's averaging 9.6 rebounds and 3 blocks per game, but all of this is in less than 20 minutes per night, which was, I think the high point of his season so far was the Gonzaga game where I think the box score had him for 5 blocks, but in my personal box score, I had him for 6. All right, at number 17, Nikola Jovic. Now, Jovic has struggled this season after a strong performance at the under-19s. I know coming into this year, I guess you could say back in September, his name was mentioned as a lottery pick. Some people had him mid-first round, late first round. He was a pretty divisive prospect, but he struggled this year. The good sign throughout the struggle is that his jump shot is improving. That's been encouraging. The bad part is he's struggling big time out of post-ups, which may not be too big of a deal because I don't see him getting many post-ups in the NBA, but that's one of his favorite spots on the floor. But the biggest issue is that he's been struggling as a pick-and-roll ball handler, and he's turning the ball over on 39% of his pick-and-roll ball handler possessions, which is a little bit concerning because his versatility is his main selling point and his main skill set. I just finished 11 through 17, so I'm going to start off at number 18 with Ismael Kamagate. Now, I will admit that I'm higher on Kamagate probably more than anyone outside of France. Now, I had the opportunity to watch him play live last month in a matchup versus Victor Wembanyama, who many have projected to be the top pick in the 2023 NBA draft, and Kamagate kicked his butt. That's the best way to put it. He kicked his butt. He was just too strong, too physical, and his motor and energy were on full display. Wembanyama picked up 2 fouls early. I know it's only one game, but there's no way you would have left that game feeling like Wembanyama was the better prospect than Ismael Kamagate. So I have Kamagate at number 18. This is someone that I'm confident that you will see his name rise up on draft boards as we get further along in the season. At number 19, I have Dyson Daniels. Dyson Daniels is out of Australia, and he has been really good for the G League Ignite this season. He's been better than I thought he would be, and he actually kind of reminds me of Lonzo Ball, but Lonzo with a little bit more sizzle, a little bit more creativity off the bounce. I see him as a connective tissue that defends, that manages the game, that can play 3 positions. Now, if he can improve his outside shooting, he'll be more valuable, which you can say that for any prospect. But I think if he improves his outside shooting, he could be used as this big guard that can initiate the offense or be a complementary piece that plays next to a primary scorer who needs the ball. So think of like the role that Lonzo is playing currently in Chicago with DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine. Shooting is the concern. He's not shooting it that great from the floor, but I see him as a guy that can defend multiple positions. And again, I am higher on Dyson Daniels today than I was at this time, let's say 3 months ago. At number 20, I have Michael Foster. Foster is another member of the G League Ignite class. That could hear his name selected in the first round. The 6'9" Foster is averaging 16 points, 8.6 rebounds, and 2 blocks per game as an 18-year-old. Now, Foster has a nice skill set to build up on, but I think that he just has this tendency to try to do too much off the dribble. It's like he's trying to show people how skilled he is. And I think like people felt that way in New York about Julius Randle his first year, and maybe even this year too. But in my opinion, with Foster, I think he's just taking too many threes, especially for a guy that is, at this point in his career, a poor shooter. He's only shooting 58% from the foul line, but he still is shooting 1.3 attempts per game from three. That's usually not a good combination, but I think if he can show within the next few games that he can play within himself and just do what he does best, which is dominate under the basket, rebound, block shots, run the floor, then I think his name could actually rise. It's just the shot selection and like trying to do too much off the dribble, which is leading to turnovers and may have some question his overall feel for the game. But I think if he can, like I say, stay within himself, he can shoot up boards because he's been very productive for an 18-year-old. At number 21, I have Caleb Houstan. Now, I'm not as high on Caleb Houstan as others. I actually almost left him off my first round list, but he seems like he's coming along and turning the corner after a horrendous start. Now, he had back-to-back good shooting games where he shot a combined 8 for 12 from deep, and this is against San Diego State and Nebraska. And those two games have bumped up his three-point field goal percentage to 38, but I still do not know how he scores or what he brings to the table if he's not shooting well. All right, speaking of Nebraska, I am born and raised in Nebraska, a Husker fan. And it's very rare that I have the opportunity to talk about a Cornhusker receiving first-round NBA interest, and it just doesn't happen. I don't think we've had a first-round pick since Tyronn Lue, and he is now coaching. But it is Bryce McGowens. McGowens is a 6'7" wing who's currently averaging 16 points and 7 rebounds per game, despite only weighing 175 pounds. You know what? Okay, I'll give him a $180. But he is skinny, but he is what I call skinny tough, which is a term that I came up with after watching Brandon Ingram play. And the NBA is always in the market for skilled wings that can create their own shot. So that's why I think Bryce McGowens is a first-round pick, despite not having the most efficient numbers as far as shooting from the floor and not being a great shooter from three. No, I mean, not too many people are great shooters at this age, but he's not really a good shooter. He's more of a scorer and shot maker than a shooter, but he's a good free throw shooter, which is usually a good indicator of good shooting touch. At number 23, rounding out the last few picks of my mock draft 1.0, but at number 23, I have Roko Prkacin. Now, Roko was expected to have a big season after flirting with the NBA last summer, and so far, the results have been so-so. But I am still intrigued with his skill set, and I believe that he can carve out a nice NBA career as a role player that brings energy off the bench. But the swing skill is his jumper. He's tough. He runs the floor hard. He's actually pretty athletic. He likes to pretty much dunk everything around the rim. I mean, there are some plays that he makes that are pretty impressive as far as just being able to go coast to coast. And then one of my favorite skill sets in players is big hands. And he does have big hands. I think having big hands can benefit you as a passer, and definitely like with finishing around the rim. I'm still high on Roko. I think that, if he can play a little bit better towards the end of the season, the season is still early, but I think if he can play a little bit better and improve as a shooter, then I still think that he has a first round grade. At 24, Caleb Love. Caleb Love was highly recruited, highly regarded. Many thought that he was going to be a first round pick entering his freshman year, and he had a very disappointing freshman season at North Carolina, where he only shot 31% from the floor and 26% from deep. Those numbers will not get you drafted unless you're Zaire Williams, who I don't know how he ended up as a top 10 pick, but I digress. Through 8 games, Caleb Love is currently averaging 16 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists per game, but it's on 44, 40, 77 shooting splits. Now, the 40% from 3 on 4.6 attempts per game is a huge sign in the right direction. Love is he's a big guard at 6'4". He has the athleticism, he has the creativity to be able to play in the NBA, have a good role in the NBA. The biggest concern was maybe his position. There were some that didn't think he was a point guard, and then didn't think he shot well enough to be a 2, but I think that he is slowly easing some of those concerns in his sophomore campaign. Number 25, Hugo Besson. I gotta get the accent part right. I was calling him Hugo Besson in previous podcasts and on my YouTube channel. But one of the keys to knowing these international prospects is you have to be able to know the pronunciation. So Hugo Besson is my biggest sleeper and wild card of the draft. Besson is under the radar, and I think that he is one of the best scorers and shot makers in this whole draft class. He's a big-time scorer from France who is currently playing for the New Zealand Breakers in the NBL. So he is Ousmane Dieng's teammate, so they got a little French connection going down there in New Zealand. Last season, Besson, I'm just saying the name just because I'm having fun with the accent, but he led the French Pro B League in scoring and shot a respectable 36% from 3, but a large percentage of those shots were self-created. So I think that this is a name you'll be hearing more of in the very near future. Not saying that he's on LaMelo's level or Josh Giddey's level, but the last 2 lead point guards to go to Australia have seen their names selected in the lottery. Now, Besson is a little bit older, so I don't know if he is seen to have, the same upside as Giddey, who was like 18, and LaMelo, who was actually young for his class. Besson is, I think, a 2001 born prospect, but I'm high on him. I think he has a little bit of Tyler Hero to his game. So remember where you heard it first. Hugo Besson as a first-round pick. All right, I had a little too much fun with that. At number 26, I'm going with Julian Champagne. And Champagne is just a hooper. That is the best way to put it. It's hard to box him into a label that we often want players to fall in. He's just a hooper. He fills up the box score on both ends of the floor. Currently, he's averaging 21 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and 1 block per game on 47% from the floor and 40% from 3. And one of the more interesting storylines is that he has a twin brother. They went to different colleges, and his twin brother opted to enter the NBA draft last summer, and he is currently playing for the Raptors while Julian decided to stay. And Julian's gamble to stay looks like it's going to be more beneficial to him because I think he's a first rounder. As a first rounder, we know the difference between being a first round pick and a two-way player financially. So Julian Champagne, hooper. That's just the best way for me to put it. I don't think he's a 3 or 4. He's just a ball player. All right, 27, rounding out the last 3. Terrence Shannon Jr. Shannon's athleticism, defensive versatility, and his motor have pretty much had him on NBA scouts' radars for the last couple of years. But the biggest issue and the main knock was he didn't have any offensive identity and he couldn't shoot. He was a reluctant shooter. But this year, in year number 3, he's shown strides. He's shooting 36% from 3, which is about the same as what he shot last year, but it is on 6 attempts per game, which is a major improvement from his freshman season when he was very, very reluctant to let it fly. He averaged like 1 3-point attempt per game, and usually that one attempt was kind of like Isaac Okoro a couple years ago, where it's like, I don't want to shoot this, but I'm so wide open that I have to shoot it. But Terrence Shannon Jr., like I said, we all know what he brings to the table as far as like his motor, his energy, and his defense. But now if he can knock down corner threes at a decent rate, we're talking about a 3-and-D wing that NBA teams covet. All right, at number 28, I can pretty much almost say the same exact thing. Like, I can say it pretty much verbatim and just switch the name and just apply it to Kansas senior Ochai Agbaji. Agbaji he's done what you would expect. He's improved every season and has improved his scoring average from 8 points a game from his junior season to his senior year. He's currently averaging 22 points per game. When was the last time you seen somebody from Kansas average 22 points per game? And he's shooting 57% from the floor and 46% from deep. But it is the confidence and assertiveness which he's shown this year that has been something the NBA scouts have been waiting for the last 3 years. All right, I'm moving on down to number 29. And I hate saying this about such a young kid, but he's been the biggest disappointment of the season. It is Yannick Nzosa, who is currently playing for Malaga in Spain. But the reason he's been a disappointment is because things have been out of his control. I had him as like a guy that I thought could be a top 5 pick coming into the season. But he's been slowly, like very slowly, recovering from an injury. And since he's been active, he's only playing 12 minutes per game. He's always been considered a long-term project with high upside as a defensive anchor. But we just honestly probably won't get to see much of his potential this season because it is very doubtful in the competitive ACB that his team is going to give him developmental minutes. He's already behind due to the injury, so they've pretty much got the rotation set. So I still think that this could be a steal for a team at 29. Imagine like one of the best teams in the league in this position to draft him and bring him along slowly and develop him. All right, at number 30, rounding out my Big Board 1.0, I have Wendell Moore. And Wendell Moore is on the rise, and he may keep rising if he continues, the same stat-stuffing performances in conference play. He's been a Swiss Army knife for Duke, averaging nearly 18 points per game, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists per night, while shooting 56% from the floor and chipping in 2 steals. Moore is young. He'll only be 20 on draft night, so he's pretty young for a junior. I mean, we got guys that are like 19 that are freshmen. But the crazy thing is that, honestly, if Wendell Moore was a sophomore putting up these numbers, I don't think there'd be any debate about him being a first-round pick. But for whatever reasons, and maybe even I'm looking at myself here, he should be a little bit higher because he still has plenty of upside, which we seem to think that a player who's been playing for 3 years, or we have like 60-something games or 100 games of film under his belt of college, we may think that guy may not have as much of an upside. So that wraps it up for Mock Draft 1.0.